Really unbelievable stuff. We must keep talking just a little bit about Messi, because I really do want to get to Julian Alvarez, the kid who grew up with posters of Messi on his wall. And that also takes away some of that chat about Messi
How old
dependency.
do we feel, Kay?
What a performance. I know. Although in football, someone could be 5 years older than you and they're an idol, because there's that, there's that bit where maybe you're headed into your teens, so you don't have to feel that old. I am starting to feel old, though, with the players that I'm seeing enjoying their last World Cups. That's starting to make me feel old. But we must continue to talk about Messi, because Sam, so often we talked about everything that we saw with him in Barcelona. And for many years, there were Argentines who criticized Messi because they wanted more from him on the international stage. And they wanted him to be doing the things that he was doing with Barcelona in terms of winning these trophies. They've got to be happy with this now. And it feels as though there has been a change in the way that they see Messi in recent years, that finally, even the critics from Argentina that weren't always behind him and now behind him, it feels like everybody believes in this player right now.
Yeah, like you say, it's such a contrast in a way, his club career and success with Barcelona to the mostly, I mean, getting to the World Cup final, I guess, isn't up, but then the downs and, the painstaking sort of heartbreak of penalty shootouts in Copa America finals with Argentina, coinciding with his 2016 retirement. And perhaps that retirement was perhaps the start of, sort of the changing of the opinion towards him, if you will, because like you say, he's never been revered like Maradona. There's obviously lots of reasons for that. But, there was that campaign to bring him back. And perhaps since then, I think his relationship has improved. I mean, they still underperformed, I guess, a little bit. They lost to eventual winners France in 2018. But from there, there's been sort of an upwards arc with Scaloni coming in and, with the way the team has sort of, been built around Messi without quite being, obviously Messi's, you're always going to depend on Messi, without quite saying Messi dependency, but there's a different sort of feel to this Argentina team and how it's built around him, like you say. And yeah, it's all sort of, I mean, before the tournament, I wasn't so sure, especially after the Saudi Arabia game and some of the performances, even though they were getting through, I wasn't sure, but it's all sort of feeling all too sort of romantic and all too sort of set up for Messi to finally get his hands on this World Cup at 35, isn't it?
Yeah,
it does have that feel, doesn't it? I mean, just watching that game, even from the beginning, at any point did you think Croatia were going to win it, Luis?
No. No. You know what? Argentina were not good in the first half, and yet they were winning 2-0. And that said a lot about what Croatia were doing. And I'm trying to figure out why Croatia were not as impressive. It could be that a lot of it, physically and emotionally, was taken out of the win against Brazil. But I doubt it, because Croatia are such professionals. I think, listen, I tweeted something before the game started about how this game actually was very similar in terms of both teams had similar DNAs. They both disrupt and they react aggressively to disruption. And I don't think Croatia were quick enough today to react to what Argentina were doing, because the moment Argentina were losing the ball or some sequence of play that wasn't going their way, they reacted almost immediately. And that said a lot about players like Tagliafico, who I thought was majestic today. Like, we're talking about Tagliafico. I thought he was fantastic. We're talking about their midfield, who was fantastic. We're going to talk about Julian Alvarez in a second. And I think Croatia really didn't show any of that. Modric was kept relatively quiet, which is a major part of it. Perisic was not as aggressive as today. So it was a little disappointing from Croatia. But I think a lot of it was down to the fact that Argentina were that overwhelming when they didn't have the ball.
Okay, so last point on Messi that I'm going to say. What is interesting, though, Sam, you talked about him looking more relaxed and everything, but then in the last game against the Netherlands, we saw a really fired up Messi. And even though he was fired up in this game, it feels as though this does all still come down to experience, where you know what you need in each game. In that game, they used what Louis van Gaal had said before the game as a motivation. And it seemed that that's why they were so pumped up afterwards, whether people liked it or not. In this game, he knew the importance of it. They cool heads, knowing what they were coming up against in Croatia. Do you think it is that we're seeing that with him? And is it great to see this passion from him that not everybody always sees if they don't follow him on a weekly basis? And if they didn't follow him on a weekly basis when he was at Barcelona in La Liga?
You know, it comes back a little bit as well to what you say about his improving relationship with the people in Argentina and the Argentine fans, because I think they like seeing that a little bit more. That's something almost that defines this Argentine, is that emotions that they run on at times. They're kind of just sort of I don't know quite what they're going on, but they're just so up and sort of so emotional. And when they win every group game, there's been huge celebrations, and obviously Messi's really bought into that, and we're seeing that emotion perhaps that added sort of, feeling that this is his last real chance at winning the World Cup is firing him up a little more and provoking, those post-match reactions to Van Gaal and Weghorst. I mean, the Van Gaal thing was also interesting because I hadn't seen a lot of stuff pre-match about that, and sort of speaking to a couple of Argentine journalists, they hadn't really gone big on the Van Gaal comments, but obviously it got into that Argentina dressing room, and they've kind of got that mindset, that it's us against the world kind of thing, and they really use that to fuel the motivation and the emotion that they're running on at the moment.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see, isn't it, that you can see, I suppose, because we see behind the doors of many a dressing room now with all the documentaries that we see, no doubt many a coach are using comments like that. And I felt it was the same. And even when I saw some of those comments, I was thinking, are they that bad? But then you don't know how they've been put to those players in that dressing room and the part that they've played in that motivation as well. So we keep telling you we're going to talk about Julian Alvarez, and we have to, because he was the one who won the penalty. Then he put the old FIFA boosters on and scored the next goal. And then he scored the third goal as well. And his story alone in this World Cup is just wonderful, because it was Lautaro Martinez, as we've mentioned. And then something changed. It was that 63rd minute in the second game, wasn't it? I think it was the second game. He comes in, everything changes. And then after that, he's scoring. He didn't score in that Netherlands game, but here he is again in this game in a semi-final at 22 years old, playing alongside his idol, who, let me just say again, he had posters of on his wall when he was a kid. He's got pictures of him as a fan. And he goes and delivers a performance like this. Now, Luis, I want to talk about his performance. Let's do that. But also, let's talk about the fact that, and this is nothing against Erling Haaland, but because of the headlines Haaland took, I feel as though Julian Alvarez and his talent and everything he is got lost at Man City. Not that it's been lost on the big stage, of course, but got lost in the headlines because of the Haaland story.
Kay, I get really angry when we talk about Julian Alvarez, and I'll tell you why. When he was still at River Plate, way back, before anybody in Europe even knew about Julian Alvarez, I was screaming on any Aston Villa forum, any Aston Villa site, this kid has a doable release clause. He is ridiculous.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis, and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.